Welcome back to this Live, the Sunday talk show here on the RIS News channel. With me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akintenuwa, Director General, Bulitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, and Professor David Awurawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, where we've had two guests. First, the presidential aspirant on the platform of the People's Democratic Party and Governor of Bauchi State, Senator Bala Muhammad. And also, we've also had the privilege of listening to Mike Zekome, SAN, LLD, OFR, PhD, on some urgent issues of national importance. Professor Awurawo, let me start with you. To respond to some of the key issues that have been raised by our two guests. Bala Mohammed, in terms of his having emerged, in quotes, as a consensus candidate determined by Northern elders, alongside with Senator Bukola Saraki. And of course, all the other issues that Chief Michael Zekome addressed, topical issues with regard to cost of forms, in the APC, the 2023 general elections, and Chief Afe Babalola calling for an interim national government and the postponement of the 2023 elections. Briefly, so that we can move on, guys.
Thanks so very much. I will begin with the perspectives presented by Bauchi Governor Bala Mohammed regarding consensus. Even from the way he spoke, it is obvious there is no consensus. So I don't know why people are wasting their time to talk about consensus that does not exist. Chief Zekome just, reminded everybody of the dictionary definition of consensus. No dissenting voice, everybody agreeing, to a particular position. That is not the case in this instance. To begin with, two of them are said to have been selected as consensus candidates. That is Bala Mohammed and former Senate President Saraki. And of course, every other person involved in the contest has come out to say they are not part of it. So why are we talking about consensus? There is simply no consensus. It's as simple as ABC. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar said he's not a part of it. Governor Tambuwa said this just yesterday and then retreated this morning that he is not part of that consensus. And virtually everybody else, linked to this issue, interested in contesting under the platform of the PDP, has said, from the North, has said they are not part of the consensus. So to talk about consensus is to talk nonsense. There is nothing like consensus. The other issue that Governor Bala Mohammed talked about, I also like to comment on, has to do with zoning to the south. You can see the argument. The argument now is that, in the over 2 decades of the Fourth Republic in 1999, the North has only produced the president for just about 3 years or thereabouts. And so, if APC is talking about zoning to the south, it does not concern the PDP. As if to suggest that President Buhari is only governing APC, doesn't govern the whole Nigeria. So you can see that your argument is so lopsided. And if you contrast that with the statement that Chief Body Judge made the other day, that it has been the cardinal, principle of PDP's, position that, once the North has it for sometime 8 years, then it should come to the South. So what that means is that there is problem, waiting for everybody, waiting for all of them, because people in the South are going to protest, and those in the North are presenting arguments that don't quite make sense, but they are sticking to it. And it's all politics. Let's see how everything plays out. Something tells me that they will likely throw the thing open for everybody to go and contest. Whoever wins now becomes the candidate, and then they forge ahead from there. But let's just wait and see how it goes. But my position is that many of the arguments being advanced do not really make sense. The consensus does not exist, one, and then the North-South thing, the argument that people like Bala Mohammed are presenting, to justify they are presenting themselves. also is difficult to really, rationalize. Then to come to Jivosekume's submission on Chivalbalola's post, I agree with most of what he said. One, that there is no constitutional provision for an interim government. We even recall that even under the military, when there was no constitution like this, under Babangida, of course, the Third Republic was there at the time. It was wobbly and fobbling. We had civilian governors. We didn't have a civilian president and all that. And then the interim government was, established, was brought in, Tisuneko and the rest. Dolapo Akinsoya, Joseph Dolapo Akinsoya, ruled that that government was illegal. And it created a major issue of legitimacy for the Shonegon ING. Of course, it lasted for 82 days until it was overthrown. So I agree with him entirely that there's no constitutional, justification for interim government. I also agree with him that there is a whole lot of frustration in the land for people to think of some, novel positions and perspectives as to how to, resolve the problem. But I do not agree with Chibayo Balola to say that the interim government will be the solution. We recall that when the 2015 elections were held, we had insurgency, we had some local government that was even under the control of Boko Haram at the time. But the elections held all the same. It was postponed. Then efforts were made to, secure those areas more, and elections held. So the insecurity will pose challenges to the electoral process. But I'm confident that just as INEC has assured, the elections will hold, will hold. What Nigerians should focus on more is a candidate that will have the capacity, the interest, the commitment to face Nigeria's problems headlong, so it will begin to make progress after the 2023 elections. Those are my thoughts on the
Thank you.
Contributors.
Thank you, Professor Awurawa. Let me bring in Yemi Adamalekun. Yemi, are you there? So many issues have been raised today by our two guests. Your take.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, clearly. Please go ahead.
Fantastic. Just starting point, I guess, with Bala Mohammed. I was kind of surprised about what he was saying about Bauchi. I don't know that much about Bauchi, so I'll concede that. But I'll use Abuja as a benchmark. From what Malam El-Rufai left to what he left when he left as MCT minister, the claims he has to great ideas and great implementation and great execution leaves a lot to be desired. Secondly, his comment about Asiwaju Tinubu was very interesting. He said if he was in PDP, they would have given him the ticket because of the fact that he raised other people up. So, and then spoke very glowing terms about Buhari, yet you are running to replace them. So it was just a bit disconcerting in what he was saying. But I think the greatest sort of humor about the whole thing was the fact that he still kept insisting on the fact that he's a consensus candidate of a small group of people, so it's not binding on the party, doesn't understand why anybody's upset, but there are two of us that are consensus candidates. Was all very interesting to listen to. And then for Mike Ozekume, what he said that I found a bit, I guess, talk about the forms. I do agree with him that saying, I won't call it peanuts, the amount of money that we spend on elections is certainly quite a lot of money. But I think the comparison to the cost of forms is well placed. 100 million naira. There's something circulating on WhatsApp that I thought was really very interesting today. Talked about the salary. I think it said 14 million. I haven't checked. I had a plan to check today. But the point the person was that the post was making was that the salary per year is about 15 million, give or take. You do that for 4 years, that's 60 million, give or take. But yet you're going to spend 100 million naira to apply for the job that's going to pay you 60 million. Which again speaks a lot to the fact that our political class doesn't see money as their salaries, but a lot more than that. I'll leave it at that. We have limited time and a lot to talk about.
Okay, Prof.
Yeah, I think there are 3 or 4 critical points to address. Briefly on the notion of consensus. The dictionary meaning given by the senior advocate of Nigeria is valid, I agree, but it is important to stress the the determining factor for the definition. Consensus is simply defined by the factor of totality. Totality. In international relations, you talk about all signatory, all member states. In this particular case, the mere fact that the totality of all the candidates, all right, have not agreed with does not mean there had not been consensus. Consensus can be partial, in part. You know, in any group, you have subgroups. So you can have consensus within disagreement. So what is happening now is that we have a situation whereby there is a consensus within a constitutive subgroup of a larger group. So we need to get that one straight. If anyone is claiming to have been given a consensual status, it will be very difficult to scientifically run away from that and say it's not valid. The second point is doctrine of necessity, which the governor of Bauchi and our amiable SCN had drawn attention to. The governor told us that it is wrong to zone the North out when the party has not done so. And in response to the question raised by Ruben, he was now trying to say that, look, the law can exist, but in some situational cases, the application of the doctrine of necessity can apply. In the context of SCN Ozekome 2, he not only referred to sections 217, 218, 305 thereafter to say the president has some legitimate powers to ensure, to perform some miracles, to ensure send soldiers there if need be. Trying to say that Afe Babalola actually, a non-Nigerian, is speaking on the basis of patriotic considerations, and that even if the Constitution does not allow for this, the doctrine of necessity can be applied. I want to agree with him essentially. I will also agree with the governor essentially on their references to doctrine of necessity. But you see, the issue is that there is, I think we were taught in physics the olden days, myopia and hypermetropia. Those who say that INEC, for instance, is ready, is quite good, and Afe Babalola is only far-sighted, looking at the future. And in this case, in an attempt to prevent the looming, disintegration of the country, that is why he has proposed that. So the Constitution can only exist and be applicable when Nigeria itself is stable. Finally, when we are talking about the nomination application form, 100 million, etc. Look, the British Prime Minister said Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. The beauty of it is simply that the application form, 100 million, is amplification, deepening of institutional corruption, scientific corruption. It is there. You try to eliminate people who are not solvent enough to apply. You must be able, you must facilitate, and I agree with Ozekome in this particular case to say, look, if you want to deepen democracy, you need to open the democratic space.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Akintenewa. Let's take very quickly another subject of interest. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday told his military chiefs and other security agencies that they were not doing enough to end the security challenges in the country, Despite enormous logistics provided by his administration, President Buhari frowned on the fact that his previous directives to the military to end insecurity in the country had not yielded much result. He directed all the operational and intelligence agencies to rescue and hurt all persons kidnapped by terrorists, including those from the recent Kaduna-bound train. All of these have come at a time that the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, explained the basis for the heavy security presence in the southeast, saying the police will no longer tolerate attacks on the men. National Security Advisor, retired Major General Babagana Monguno, expressed the president's reservations while speaking with newsmen yesterday after a 3.5-hour meeting. Well, that was during the week, not yesterday. After a 3.5-hour meeting of the National Security Council at the State House, presided over by the president himself. Well, Yemi Adamolekun, let me come to you very quickly. The president says he's disappointed, he's not happy. Well, who is happy with the security situation in the country? Even the House of Reps the other day resolved that nothing has been done and that the Minister of Defense and the National Security Advisor should be turned at risk. So when the president says he's frustrated, he's disappointed, he's not happy, okay, should we be happy now that the NSA says it's a collective responsibility and that ordinary people should learn to give information to security agents?
I'll start off. I assumed Prof was going to speak about this, but since he didn't, I'll just add this really quickly. Mr. Ozekume's point about former President Jonathan and the analysis about him joining the APC, I thought that was quite apt. I mean, he left on a high note as an elder statesman, stepping down and not fighting, but then joining a party that you fought against, just for me, would demean what he stood for when he allowed a peaceful transition in 2015. But secondly, though, the flip side of that is comparing his words that power not at the expense of the blood of any Nigerian is comparable to Abraham Lincoln's statement about democracy for the people, by the people. I thought that was a bit of an extension of the value of it. I don't think any president or anybody running for public office should value their ambition over anybody's life. So while he said it, and it was quite nice that he said it at the time, I think then making that such a profound statement as if that should not be the norm also speaks a bit to where we are as a country and the way we do politics. Now, to your question, I think you're quite right, and I couldn't have framed it better. If Mr. President is not happy, what should Nigerians who are victims of his, incompetence, what should we feel? He says security should be better. Yes, and this is for me, who I am not a mother whose child was kidnapped. I'm not a husband, I'm not a wife whose husband has been kidnapped or killed. We've had more recently Kaduna, Abuja. Till today, the federal government of Nigeria has still not given us a clear summary of what happened. These are actually the number of people that bought tickets. Unfortunately, because of corruption or whatever you want to blame, other people were on the train. This is the total number of people that were on the train. X number have been released, X number in the hospital, X number died, X number is still in the hands of the bandits, or terrorists, I should say. Till today, that hasn't been done. So, but the president has the audacity to tell us that he's upset when he is not taking responsibility for the things that he can take responsibility for. From the Chibok abduction in 2014, we've been talking about the fact that Nigeria does not have a missing persons register. So there's no master list that tells you who is missing in Nigeria. And then second, as terrorism, banditry, kidnapping has increased, there's also no master list. So I can guarantee, as I know my name, that Mr. President does not have any idea of the magnitude of this problem, because it is not being documented in a way that allows you to want to solve the problem. So when your reaction to this type of problem that is causing people lives, that is causing people sorrow, that is causing people trauma, that is causing people billions of naira in ransom money, if your reaction is just to stand up on the podium and say, I am upset, I'm sorry, that doesn't mean anything.
Okay, Professor Awurawa, very quickly.
Well, I think the president was right to say he is upset. But after saying I'm upset, what next? It is that next thing that is problematic. He has said this several times before now. This is not the first time, the president is saying he's upset. It's also not the first time he's giving the security, officials a marching order to ensure that kidnapping doesn't take place. These mass killings are, stopped and all that. But as he's giving them the marching order, things are getting worse. Even the security agencies themselves are not spared. Shortly after that terrorist attack on that train, from Abuja to Kaduna, there was, this attack on military men, where we understand a dozen of them were killed. Like I said before, in those old days, if we heard that one soldier was killed, it's as if hell would be let loose. And now we hear 7 soldiers killed, 6 soldiers killed, a dozen soldiers killed, and they just mentioned just, like that, and people just move on. So my overall comment on that is, it is not enough to say I'm upset. It's not enough to give a marching order. We should first ask, what is the strategy of the government? What is the strategy of the military? First, to ensure that proactive steps are taken to prevent these things from taking place and not reacting when they have taken place already. What is the strategy to liberate those who have been captured? Who are in terrorist den, who are kidnappers den. What is the strategy to, because the president said they should ensure that all those kidnapped are set free. Fine. What is the strategy to ensure that this release takes place? I was talking about Israelis last week, that Israelis have this style of storming in a commando style, kidnappers den, and releasing people kidnapped on hot. Sometimes 1 or 2 collateral damages take place, but they do that. And I said, our Israeli spirit, since you have that endemic here in Nigeria now, what is our strategy to ensure that these things, the marching order the president has given is carried out such that those who have been captured are liberated and new ones are not captured? It is that follow-up issue that I don't think enough attention has been paid to, and that is what the president himself and security, leaders of security agencies should focus on. One final thing, the National Security Advisor talked about, just 30 seconds, talked about information from the locals. I thought I should emphasize that. It is important. Anywhere you have terrorism, anywhere you have insurgents, a study of insurgencies and terrorism shows that the involvement of the locals, the information they give is crucial, and emphasis should be placed on that. Locals should be persuaded to give information which will be useful, to the security agencies.
Well, but who is going to do that? But okay, quickly, Professor Akintenwa, let me come to you. Before we take our final topic of the day, the French presidential runoff election taking place, ongoing as we speak. Quickly, on the security situation in Nigeria.
The Yoruba of the southwest Nigeria have one proverbial saying, "Ẹ̀yìnkùlé ni ọ̀tá wà, ilé ni aṣeni gbé." That is, the enemy is outside. But the problematic, the impediment, the obstacle to one's progress in the house is in the house. In other words, internal and external. The internal factor, as much as I agree with my sister Yemi and David, Professor Awurawo, the problem goes beyond strategy. What is the strategy? It's not that they don't have strategy. The issue is simply that the government of Nigeria is yet to distinguish between a problematic and a problem. The problematic is that within government of Nigeria, the enemies are outside. Those creating blood obstacles in the bloodstream of men, they are within Nigeria government. We have been told that you have Boko Haramis in the government. Jonathan referred to it when he was in power. And I always refer you to what Muammar Gaddafi had said, that there will not be any enduring peace in Nigeria until Nigeria is divided into Muslim North and Christian South. I asked myself, why this? So when you look at this type of situation, we need to look at this problematic first. Then all strategies can work very well.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Well, finally, French voters are today choosing between centrist sitting president Emmanuel Macron and far-right leader Marine Le Pen. 44 years old Macron is vying to become the first French president to be re-elected in 20 years, but he faces a strong challenge. His opponent, 53-year-old lawyer Le Pen, is challenging him for the presidency for a third time. She lost to Macron in 2017. Although she was trailing in the final polls, Le Pen has never come this close to winning. Well, there are other factors. Professor Akinterewa, you are a French product of Sorbonne, right? Yeah, you know the French system. There's still the other factor of Mélenchon. We say, well, don't vote for the far right, but you know, at the same time, I'm not endorsing Macron. But what we're told after the debate is that it looks like President Macron is in the lead comfortably with this runoff. What is likely to happen? But some other people have said that, well, maybe there are lessons we can learn from the French presidential post, particularly in terms of the focus on ideas, issues, rather than personalities.
You asked the question and you have answered. Presidential debate, presidential candidates, they must have quality. You see, when we are told here XYZ is campaigning or he wants to contest, none of them has come out to tell us what the real problem is that they want to address. You must be able to articulate not simply the problems, but the problematic. You see, the reasoning of the French all along, the first thing is that when you have many problems, what is the problem that is in the epicenter? It is that problem at the epicenter that is often referred to as problematic. Now, when you consider the debate, you will discover that the debate is very issue-oriented. It started, first of all, with the issue of cost of living. Before you come to other critical issues, you will see that for every point raised by Macron, Marine Le Pen will respond and explain her own side to convince the electorate that is better. I noted here during the first round that it is that particular debate before the second round of election that generally determines the attitudinal disposition of every voter. I recall the case of George Marchais, whose father was said ran away from the war front, and by that particular time, the French people said, oh, because the questioning journalist said, look, it's on record, your father left the war front. Now we waited to fight. Now you are now coming to take advantage of our own efforts. So this debate was very critical. It is this debate that will determine largely the independentist character of French voters. You are very right on the issues. Look at the question that was raised to that Macron raised. He accused Marine Le Pen that, look, you are supporting Putin, that you took a bank loan from Putin, from Russia. She responded to say, yes, I have to go and take loan in Russia because the French banks wouldn't give her loan. Take another issue, energy. And now you look at it that one-on-one for every issue discussed, the candidates have their own explanations. So you, the observer, the listening voter, you will be able to determine specifically who should be voted for. Like I once said, the popular saying is that the Frenchman votes with his head, but in the first round, in the second round, this time it is with the heart. They will now know, what do I gain from this particular candidate?
Okay, well, I guess the election will be decided eventually by the many undecided voters that both Marine Le Pen and President Macron will be appealing to. Yemi Adamolekun, very quickly. Le Pen or Macron?
I think the interesting thing for me is the fact that Jean-Luc said that, as you said, he didn't endorse. He said definitely not Marine Le Pen, but didn't endorse Macron. But what's interesting about that is that I saw a Vox Pop, and someone was asked, and she said, well, she doesn't really like Macron, but she's going to vote for Macron because every time she doesn't trust the polls. So that they said Marine Le Pen might not win, but she's not taking any chances because she doesn't want Marine Le Pen. And I think that's very significant in terms of the Nigerian context, where we tend to say that, oh, I don't like this person or don't like that person, and then we stay home and don't vote. Let's not be mistaken. A non-vote is a vote. And for this lady, she was clear that even though these are not ideal candidates, I know the one I want the least to have to be my prime minister. And she's going to make that vote. So I think there's definitely a lesson to be learned in that. And Jean-Luc's point, I think, also should not be overlooked. He was very clear about who his followers should not vote for, especially since the gap between them was quite close. Marine Le Pen was, about 23%, while he had about 22%. So he was very clear about who not to vote for, but he was silent on if you either decided to stay at home or you go out and vote for Macron. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Okay, maybe what is clear is that the margin at the end of the day is likely to be closer than it was in 2017. But the debate showed that Macron is even better prepared this time than it was 5 years ago. Very quickly, Professor Awurawa, before we bring this to a close.
Well, it will likely be Macron, given all the dynamics, 28%, 23%, and then the 1.2% is saying you may not vote for Macron, but certainly don't vote for Le Pen. So all of those dynamics, indicate that Macron will likely win. But you see, for the French people, the amount of support, that Le Pen has had should be a bit concerning to them. What that means is that France is shifting far, far more to the right than anybody can remember in recent memory. And what that means is that Brexit is not too far away, from what happened, in the United Kingdom. All of those things should be concerning to French political analysts, French people, and all that, because usually when you have such a shift to the right, there's a way it affects, the way the country functions, and of course the country's international relations and things like that. And who knows if Macron does not do so as expected by the people? Of course, Le Pen can still give a shot once more. And who says she cannot win if she does not win this time? So all of that. Now, lessons for Nigeria. We see the role that the debate has had. The debate certainly has had a role in people making up their mind, especially those who were not fully committed before now. In our last series of elections, debates have not been, given the pride of place that it should have. We hope that moving forward in 2023, we'll have a robust debate, although we have a very large illiterate population, which influences how much debates affect elections. But nevertheless, we should be seen to be making progress, not going back. Once upon a time, 1999, to 2003, we had fairly robust, engagement by the candidates. But we seem to have slipped backwards in the last sector. So 2023, these are things that we should focus on. that we expect will deepen democracy in Nigeria.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor Awurawa. Thank you very much, Professor Akintenewa. And thank you, Yemi Adamalekun, for joining us. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. For my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.